Hey, we're glad you're with us today on The Perspective. I hope you're enjoying the Summer Encore series as we bring to you some of the highlights of the past year. It's been an amazing year, and I want to thank you for participating by praying for us and supporting us. You know, every day as we go through the summer, it is easy to get overwhelmed with life. If the rain is coming down, if the sun's there, we just feel like our spirits are being lifted up. Now, I'm not sure where you're at this week, but this is going to be a fun week. We got some Star Wars stuff that you're going to get intellectual about. We've got Dr. Sam, who's an ethicist, who's going to be with us. We have a former porn performer who turned her life over to Jesus and has experienced incredible healing, and a pastor's daughter who helps people who've been hurt by the church. More than anything else, today I want to share with you the promise for today from Isaiah 41:13. Says, I, the Lord, your God, hold your right hand. It is I who say to you, fear not. I am the one who helps you. And may that promise carry you through this week as you watch The Perspective. You know, as we journey together on this whole series called Going Up, we're going to be unpacking for the next several days the life of Abraham. And Abraham is known as the great-granddaddy of faith. And as you think about faith, Mitch, what comes into your mind when that word comes up?
Well, Mike, I hear faith and I think about, it's not looking at something that I could physically see, but it's about expectantly hoping. And people do that with a lot of different things today. I know different political parties say you can expectantly hope on me. I know different social causes will say that, but I've put my faith in Jesus. And I believe that's what faith is about.
Well, and we're going to talk a little bit about what happens if we feel disappointment or if God doesn't answer our prayers the way that we do.
Absolutely.
But we have a special guest here today. We have Jeff Rhoades here. He's the author of a book out now called, get ready for this, The Bible, Dimensions and the Spiritual Realm. And quite an intriguing title as we are going to unpack with Jeff. Are angels, is heaven really as close as he thinks it is? And Jeff, thanks for joining us. And we're glad you're with us all the way from Kansas today.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Mitch. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure.
So let's just dive into the first question. Why are people reluctant to talk about the spiritual realm? And maybe you could explain that whole phrase. What is the spiritual realm?
Well, the spiritual realm is that invisible realm, that invisible space that angels dwell, where heaven is located, and where there's activity going on behind the scenes that we know from the Bible that things are happening. I think that the reluctancy to talk about that from a scientific standpoint, in that it's something that can't be tested, it can't be weighed, it can't be looked at in a laboratory. And that's the reluctancy, I believe.
Wow. So, Jeff, let me ask you this. There's a lot of different things you could have written about, a lot of maybe easier subjects, a little more tangible subjects. What made you decide to write on such a big topic that even the scientists are kind of scared of?
It was a very difficult subject to write on. But when I taught in my Sunday school class or in Bible class about angels, I really saw a fascination when I talked about angels. Instead of us thinking of angels being three-dimensional characters that kind of appear and disappear, kind of like ghosts, I challenged people to think in higher dimensions. What if they're in the dimension next to us, and when God gives them permission, they slip into our dimension and we see them three-dimensionally? And that's what started it. And then when I wrote my dissertation, I decided to do it on this, so I had to do a whole lot more study on it.
Wow. So, Jeff, let me ask you another question. Just as we're talking about angels, my brother actually got a tattoo on his arm, and he called it a biblically accurate angel. And that's what he said. And I'm not, putting my name on that, but it's really incredible looking. There's spinning eyes everywhere. It's a crazy looking thing. When I grew up in Sunday school, angels were wearing white. They had long hair. Can I even understand what an angel looks like? What do you say?
Well, angels do appear different ways in the Bible. They do appear as your brother's tattoo in Ezekiel and in Isaiah and a few other places, but they also appear as Gabriel did to Mary and Joseph, and to the angels at the tomb, that as you said, in a white robe. So angels, I think they really appear to us in our three-dimensional realm in a way that we understand it when they step into it. In the book, I talk about flatland. And so we can't think of a fourth dimension. What's a fourth dimension look like? Well, in Flatland, if I'm in a piece of paper and I stick my finger in that piece of paper, I only see what intersects with that piece of paper. I don't see anything but intersection. And so when angels step from a fourth dimension into our three dimension, we just see them as they intersect with our dimension.
So Jeff, where did you build that? I was going to say hypothesis from, but explain to us where you went to in Scripture and how you arrived at that conclusion.
So it begins with knowing that we have been created. So whether you believe in a 6-day creation or that God used evolution, however, most people, even scientists, as I read and prepared for this book, believe in some kind of a creator, whether it's the God of the Bible or something else, because we just didn't happen to come out of nowhere. So if God created the three-dimensional realm that we live in, then he has to be outside of that which he created. So number one, in that aspect, there has to be a higher dimension just from that aspect. And then as we look at heaven, does heaven have dimensionality? Where is it? Where is it located? We normally think it's part of our three-dimensional realm. So it's like way on the other side of the universe. It's just kind of up above there. Or we do this, we kind of mystify it. It's kind of there. It's in the kind of mysterious place.
Let's pause for just a second. Let me pause for a second. So unpack Jesus' words in John 14 when he said to his disciples about heaven, I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again. How do you interpret that as you think about the third or the fourth dimension?
So I see that he is preparing a place that has dimensionality. There's a place with space and time. So is it part of our three-dimensional realm? Or is it a fourth dimension of space and time that's outside of our three dimensions? That would be the question. And I believe it has to be outside of that, since we can't see it, since we can't touch it, since we always just push heaven farther and farther away. But now we see that the universe is big, right? And it's way out there. So it has to be in that next dimension. And I believe hell is in the next dimension also. I don't believe it's in the center of the earth. Like we always point down. Well,
right.
Maybe hell is down in dimensions and heaven is up in dimensions.
So Jeff, let me just jump in. Let me ask you a question. I mean, some of this stuff, I can think about it for a little bit, then it starts to hurt my brain. But I'm wondering, well, when I go back, when I get back to work and just driving down the street or whatever it is I'm doing, how should I feel about this sort of thing? The idea of different dimensions, is heaven very far away? And as you're saying, maybe it's right next to us. What are we going to do with this?
So really the practicality comes in where we find what things are cross-dimensional. Well, angels are cross-dimensional. Christ is cross-dimensional. We see him in his resurrected body kind of pass through walls. So he has some kind of dimensionality. But then we are also physical beings. And then after the fall, we kind of relegated ourselves to this physical world because we're also spiritual beings. James 2:26 says that we're physical and spiritual, that we are spiritual beings. So we got cross-dimensional things. What is it? Prayer. So when I pray, I can enter into the spirit world. I enter into God's presence through prayer. Worship. When I worship God, I enter into his presence. I go into the spiritual realm when I worship. The Bible is a cross-dimensional communication from God outside of our space and time in his dimension to us in our dimension to prove that the Bible is true. And then spiritual warfare is the most fascinating. And that is something that we are able to enter into the other realm and do spiritual warfare. That's cross-dimensional. So that's the application. That's the nuts and bolts of it after we do all this kind of studying.
Seems to me that we don't teach enough about that in the church. Thoughts
Correct.
on that?
I agree. We don't, because we don't understand it that much. And, even angels, okay, you talked about angels earlier, Mitch, and we don't understand a lot about angels. We get these little pictures. So it's like taking a puzzle that has 500 pieces. And in the Bible, we get 20 of those pieces and we lay them on a table. And now we start filling in those gaps. We'll probably fill them in wrong, right? We only have these 20 pieces. Let's don't say things that we shouldn't say about it. Let's be careful how we fill those gaps. Now we can do conjecture, we can guess, but it'd be like coming to the United States and looking at 20 different things, going to Washington, D.C., going to North America, you go up to Canada, and trying to make conclusions about North America from 20 different spots.
Well, let's do this. Let's take that verse that many people know of, and maybe just before we go to the break, and we're going to have you come back again, we're going to keep chatting about this. Talk to us about that verse that says, the angel of the Lord encamps around us. Do each of us have an angel? And how close is that angel?
So in that particular verse, I believe the angel of the Lord is talking about the pre-incarnate Jesus Christ. So in that aspect, yes, he does camp around us, that we have protection. He's giving us that vision that we have protection about us. Do each one of us have an angel that's assigned to us? I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that angels do protect us, and that they're at God's command to do his bidding whenever he wants them to. So I pray all the time for angels to be around our church, to be around my family, that he would protect us from physical and spiritual harm. So yes, I believe angels are God's messengers and God's tools that he uses.
Okay, fascinating conversation. We're going to be back with more with Dr. Jeff Rhoades in just a moment. As we contemplate what he's already shared, we're going to talk more, so stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back.
Well, welcome back. And with us today is Jeff Rhoades. He has a PhD, and he is the author of The Bible, Dimensions, and the Spiritual Realm. Jeff, it's been great talking to you. And just as we were thinking earlier, I asked you about, what do angels look like? And I said, my brother's tattoo, he said it's a biblically accurate angel. It's spinning, it's got eyes everywhere. And just from what you've been saying, it sounds like on the other arm, he could draw a Sunday school angel with the robes and the hair, and that would also be a biblically accurate angel.
I believe so. I think that's exactly right. Yes.
Right on. So
I think he could do a third one in the middle, and it could just look like an ordinary Joe. How would you think about that?
Hey, yeah. In Hebrews it says that we entertain angels unaware, right?
Exactly.
So I think you're absolutely correct in that sometimes we have maybe met angels and we have been unaware according to God's word.
I'm going to go home and tell my brother he's got 2 more tattoos to do. But hey, you know what? We're clowning around. But Jeff, let me just jump in and ask you, thinking about angels, thinking about spiritual warfare, just talk to us about your understanding of spiritual warfare. Is it all about angels? What about demons, the different dimensions? Talk to us about spiritual warfare.
So we see a lot about demons, especially in the Gospels. When Jesus Christ, God in the flesh, came to earth, I think there was a spiritual attack against him and against his mission. So we saw a lot of demon activity in his area, and he did a lot of casting out demons, and he did a lot of subduing the demons. But then when we get into the New Testament and Paul writing to the New Testament believers, to us, he really talks about how we do spiritual battle, and it's by understanding and believing truth, that it's in the mind. So one of the most important verses that we have, and let me read it, and it's in 2 Corinthians 10, 3, 4, and 5. It says, for though we walk in the flesh, so here's saying, though we're in this 3-dimensional world, we're in a 3-dimensional body, we do not war according to the flesh or according to this 3-dimensional body. For our weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty in God for pulling down strongholds. And people will focus on that strongholds, and they'll think, oh, hey, these strongholds, what are they? Is it Satan over our city? Is it angels over us? Do we need to pray against these? Well, he talks about that in the next verse. And then the rest of that verse, he says, casting down arguments and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God and bringing every thought in captivity. So it's about the mind. And over again, Satan has blinded their minds. Eve was deceived. I'm worried about you being deceived. The belt of truth against Satan, the sword of the Spirit. So when we do spiritual battle, a lot of that really is believing truth. Satan is the chief of misinformation. He wants to deceive us. So here's an example of spiritual warfare. Man, I'm down. I'm depressed. I'm nobody. Everybody hates me. I'm not worth anything. Okay, that's opening a doorway for Satan to come in and attack me. Why? Because the truth is that God died for me. He came to earth. He died on the cross for my sins. I am important according to God. So we have to combat those things with truth. And so many times we don't do that. And if you don't know truth, you can't combat that. But spiritual warfare is very basic. It's very important. And it's God's word. It's God's truth that helps us do it.
Okay, I want you to take that and let's talk about a slightly different aspect. Talk to us about the thin veil. How close is heaven?
Hmm.
And you'd mentioned earlier in the first part of the conversation that hell is also part of that dimension. Let's talk first of all about heaven.
Okay, so it's hard for us to picture a fourth dimension of space. So I always give everybody a little bit of an example. I started earlier. You have a piece of paper. You got Flat Man. Flat Man lives in this piece of paper. If I stick my finger into Flat Man's world, he only sees what intersects with his world. He sees a circle. I stick my fingertips there. He just sees 3 circles. Okay, I can be right next to Flat Man's world, and he has no idea I exist until I step into his 2 dimensions. So perhaps that's how it is with fourth dimension to our 3-dimensional world. I believe the angels are right next to where we're at. Heaven is right next to where we're at. And when we die, we move 1 millimeter into that next dimension, or those angels move 1 millimeter into where we're at. We don't travel billions of light years away from where we're at. It's right next to us. So that thin veil, I think, is that just us being unaware of the spiritual realm because of the fall. We relegated ourselves to our 5 senses. When we chose the fruit, when we chose to sin because of the 5 senses, now we've been relegated to our 5
So
senses.
my mind is going with the phrase that he is going to create a new heaven and a new earth. Thoughts on that? And
So
I'm having
yes,
fun. I'm having fun just firing these questions out at you, Jeff.
and I think that it would be like us going, let's say we lived in a computer game. Like on my desk, I have a sim game and we live in that. It's a 2-dimensional world. And when that animated figure dies, for example, and steps out of that 2-dimensional world, he steps into my world where I'm at. Wow, that would be wild, wouldn't it? It would be hard to explain, but it would be real. It would be concrete. It wouldn't be like where he was at. So for us, I think when we step out of this 3-dimensional world into that 4-dimensional world, it'll be a new heavens, a new earth. And then when he describes this Jerusalem, it's so hard. Is it a pyramid? Is it a cube? I think he's describing a 4th-dimensional place that's difficult for a 3-dimensional being to explain.
Right on. Hey, so Jeff, let me ask you this. I mean, we're talking about these things, and even what you just said, is it a pyramid? Is it a cube? What is it? Well, maybe it's a 4th dimension, and so it's hard for the writers in the books of the Bible to even put it into words. So if we're talking about that, what I want to know is, should we, as believers, should we be excited about all this? Should I be looking forward to a 4th dimension? Because right now I'm saying, well, it sounds a little scary. I can't even look at it or wrap my head around it. How should I feel about this?
I think we should be very excited about stepping out into something that where sound is more distinct, where color is brighter. We always make heaven less than where we're at. It's foggy. It's hard to know. I mean, this is our reality. So it's kind of things floating around. But I think heaven is going to be more real than where we're at. If you look at science, and for those that are seeking skeptics, if they look at my book, I lay out a lot of science. I talk about string theory. String theory really points, it has to have more dimensions to work, and that's why I put it in the book. But it says that the basics of all atoms are space. And the very basics of that atom is their electricity, their energy. It's little strands of energy. So there's a really good fact that what we're living in is not a simulation, but it's a 3-dimensional digital world that God created. He hit the space bar 6 times on Creation Week. And we're here. And when we step out of this, we're going to step out into the room, into the world where God is. And we've never been there, so we don't know that. But he tries to describe it in 3-dimensional terms that makes us excited about it.
Jeff, we got just about a minute left in the conversation. Talk to us about the connection between spirituality and the things you've been chatting and science. Can they merge together, or are they
two definitely separate? No, science really points to God. So there's scientific fact and there's scientific theory. And theories are always changing. Now we look at the facts, and the fact is we live in a mathematical universe. There are laws. There are laws that guide everything, that some creator behind this has created this universe. I'm not here talking to you on these computers because we had some explosion in the past. Something either had to guide that explosion or something created us in 6 days and put us here. So when we look at science and we discover things, we look at the theory of relativity. Wow, space and time are elastic. That really blew everybody's minds. You know what I mean? That it's not fixed. And so there's more. So what that shows me is with theory of relativity, with string theory, and the various other things that science has found, but they don't understand, is there's more to our universe than meets the eye. There's more than we can understand. There's more out there.
Jeff, you've written an amazing book, and it's called The Bible, Dimensions, and the Spiritual Realm. Bible, Dimensions, and Spiritual Realm. I want to encourage you, people listening today, watching the program, to get a copy of it. It has been so insightful, our conversation. Wish we had more time, but that's the reality of life. Jeff Rhoades, thank you for being with us today. We appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me. Thanks, Mitch. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. And we'll be right back after this quick break. You know, sometimes just to unwind and keep it all together, I get in my truck and go for a drive. Sometimes I get on my motorcycle. We do all sorts of different things to try to keep ourselves together. We want to help you in your journey of life, to keep it together, to discover God's principles for living. All this month, I want to make available to you free of charge Dr. Grant Mullen's amazing book, Emotionally Free. It's a prescription for healing, body, soul, and spirit. I love this book. I recommend it to people. I want to give it to you. Write to us at theperspective.tv.
Well, welcome back, everybody. We've just come out of our second interview with Dr. Jeff Rhoades, where we were talking about the fourth dimension and how that actually relates to the spiritual realm.
It was fascinating.
It was exciting. I had to strap in my seatbelt. But, you know, Mike, just as we were talking, I want to know what you think about this. We were talking, and at sometimes it felt like, wow, could this really be real? Could this really be real? And when he was talking about when we end this life and when we step into heaven, it's going to be like even a bigger reality. And I was reminded of this verse. It's 1 Corinthians 13, verse 12. And Paul writes, "Now we see in a mirror dimly, but then we will see face to face." There is a spiritual realm, but that's not something to be afraid of. It's actually exciting that we get to be with the Lord in a way that's even more real.
And one thought is, I think sometimes it can be fearful because we want to limit God. We want to think we can figure it all out, and we can't.
Absolutely. Well, hey, everybody, stay with us. Right up next, Mike's Got to Teach.
We're doing a series of talks called Going Up. One of the challenges of going up is we listen to an elevator, and I had to listen to an elevator all summer. It said going down or going up. I hated the sound of going down, but I wanted to say what's involved in going up. And I've discovered that to go up, we have to learn to let go of our agenda, to let go sometimes of what seems very rational in our minds. Jeff Rhoades helped us think through that a little bit today in the interview, that there is so much that we don't understand. When we come to the Old Testament, we find the story of Abraham. Abraham is about 115 years old. His son of promise has been born. He's 15. His name is Isaac. Abraham didn't teach him to ride a bike, but lately he probably taught him to race a camel or to ride a horse. And they were enjoying life in all its fullness. And we come to Genesis chapter 22, and God is going to test him. He's going to test this man of faith. We're going to look a little later at the different ways that God prepared him for this moment. But right now, we need to realize that at times in our own journey, we will be tested. And what seems rational to us is not rational to God. He calls us to lean on him. Listen to what it says. After these things, God tested Abraham, and he said to him, Abraham, and he said, here I am. And he said, take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you. And then it says, Abraham rose early in the morning, and he obeyed. He went and he split wood, and he got the fire. Now, Abraham was a sheik. He was a wealthy man. He could have had his soldiers go split the wood, but likely he was working through his own grief, saying, God has given me this son, and now he's asking me to take his life. But he had learned that he needs to obey God. He needs to trust him, even when he fully doesn't understand. I often would play the game of trust with my children when they were small. They would stand on the stair and I would whisper, jump, and they would jump. What was fine when they were 3 or 4, they would jump 2 or 3 steps. I never dropped them. Even when they got to be about the age of 6, I never dropped them. We stopped it when they turned 16 or 17. It was a little too much to carry. I'm only joking at that point. But you know, there's a place where they would trust, and in midair, their trust would be welded with my faithfulness, that as their father, I was going to catch them. And in 6 or 7 years of jumping, 100% of the time I caught them. How much more is it with our Heavenly Father? And yet He calls us at times to trust Him in ways that we can't understand. And so that was the case with Abraham. Friends, a faith that is not tested is not worth anything. We need to remember that. It's like a muscle that needs to be strengthened. Satan wants to tempt us. He said, God doesn't care. He doesn't know what He's doing. He shouldn't be allowing you to go through this if He really loved you. But rather, God comes and He tests us. And He says, will you rely on me? And there's a number of things here that happened in the life of Abraham that prepared him for this moment. We're only going to look at a couple right now. We'll look at more tomorrow. But back in the beginning in Genesis chapter 12, God spoke to Abraham and He said, through you, I'm going to bless all the nations of the earth. And when Isaac was born, listen to what it says. Sarah heard this. She was 90 and she's laughing. She says, am I going to have a child at the age of 90? And then the angel of the Lord said, with God, nothing is impossible. That's what the angel said to Mary when she found out she was going to carry the Christ child. But the angel says, Sarah, your wife will bear you a son. You will call his name Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his offspring after him. But I will establish my covenant with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear to you at this time next year. Abraham chose to believe that if he was to take the life of his son, we'll explain that tomorrow, that God would somehow raise him up. The miracle of life that He gave him in Isaac, it would happen again through a resurrection. He chose to trust. And that's what God is inviting you and I to do today, to trust in Him. You've been enjoying the programs this week, whether it's been our Star Wars feature or talking to Dr. Sam, our ethicist. Doesn't really matter who we've been speaking to. At some point, the questions come back to our mortality and how we process life. And that's why all this week, I want to offer once again John Burke's amazing book, Imagine Heaven. It says 1 out of 25 Americans have had a near-death experience, and I'm sure that is the same for Canadians. It's a book that talks about what people have experienced before they've been brought back to life here on earth. It takes away the fear of death and the wondering what's going to happen, because as he speaks and interviews to over 1,000 people, he lines it up with Scripture, and their experiences are exactly what the Scriptures have talked about. Get a copy of Imagine Heaven. And if you're not sure you're going to heaven, we have another book that's called Just Start. It talks about how to have that relationship with Jesus so that when life is over, you don't have to fear where you're going to spend eternity. Live with that assurance. That's why I want to invite you to write to us at The Perspective for these books, Imagine Heaven and Just Start. And why not just start today by praying with me to put Christ in the center of your life and say, Lord Jesus, I'm asking you to be my leader and Lord, to be my Savior today. He always hears that prayer. Write to me at theperspective.tv.